Close your eyes now and take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, drawing in peace and tranquility. Hold it gently for a moment, feeling the air fill your lungs completely. And now release it softly through your mouth, letting all the tension and worry of the day flow out of your body like water finding its way home to the sea. Tonight, we're traveling together on a peaceful journey back through time, to ancient China, to a land where great rivers carved valleys through mountains, where mist-shrouded peaks inspired poets and painters, where the scent of jasmine and osmanthus filled imperial gardens, and where civilization flourished for thousands of years in harmony with the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. Imagine yourself standing on a gentle hillside in the early morning light. Before you stretches a landscape of remarkable beauty. Terraced fields cascade down the slopes like steps carved by patient hands over generations, their surfaces reflecting the soft glow of dawn. In the distance, mountains rise through layers of morning mist, their peaks appearing and disappearing like islands floating in a sea of clouds. This is the landscape of ancient China, where humans have worked the land for over 5,000 years. Creating one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. The air is cool and fresh, carrying with it the scent of earth and growing things. You can hear the gentle sound of water somewhere nearby, perhaps a stream making its way down from the mountains, or the rhythmic splash of irrigation water being lifted into the fields by a wooden water wheel. The ancient Chinese were masters of water management, understanding that civilization itself depended on controlling and directing the flow of rivers and streams. Take another deep breath and let yourself sink even deeper into this peaceful place. The sky above you is brightening from deep indigo to pale blue, and you can see the last stars fading in the west. Chinese astronomers observed these stars for thousands of years, keeping detailed records of celestial events that allowed them to create accurate calendars and predict eclipses. They identified and named constellations, mapped the movements of planets, and understood that the heavens followed predictable patterns that could guide human activities on Earth. In the distance, you can see a village nestled in a valley, its tile roofs glowing warm and golden as the sun's first rays touch them. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires, creating thin vertical lines that disperse into the morning sky. The village has been here for generations, perhaps centuries, its residents living according to rhythms established long ago, planting and harvesting, celebrating festivals, honoring ancestors, passing knowledge and traditions from parent to child in an unbroken chain stretching back through time. You begin to walk slowly down the hillside toward the village, your footsteps quiet on the narrow path. There's no hurry, no sense of urgency. Time feels different here, more expansive and forgiving, as if each moment contains within it the possibility of perfect peace. The path winds between terraced fields where rice is growing, the young plants of vibrant green that seems to glow with inner light in the morning sun. The cultivation of rice in China dates back at least 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest agricultural traditions in the world. The process of growing rice required intimate knowledge of water levels, soil conditions, and seasonal changes, and this knowledge was refined and passed down through countless generations. Rice became not just a crop but the foundation of life itself, shaping society, culture, and even philosophy. As you walk, you notice the careful attention that has been paid to every aspect of the landscape. Nothing is haphazard or random, the fields are precisely leveled, the irrigation channels follow exact contours, even the placement of trees seems deliberate and harmonious. This reflects one of the deep principles of Chinese culture, the belief that humans should work with nature rather than against it, shaping the landscape in ways that enhance its natural beauty while meeting human needs. The morning light grows stronger, and you can feel its warmth beginning to touch your face and hands. A bird calls somewhere nearby, perhaps a Chinese oriole with its melodious song, or a red-crowned crane, considered a symbol of longevity and peace in Chinese culture. The sound echoes across the valley and then fades, leaving behind a silence that feels full rather than empty, pregnant with possibility. As you approach the village, you notice how harmoniously it fits into the landscape, as though it grew here naturally rather than being built. The houses are constructed with wooden frames and walls of packed earth or brick, with curved tile roofs that sweep upward at the corners like the wings of birds preparing for flight. This distinctive roof style wasn't just aesthetic. The curved eaves helped direct rainwater away from the walls and provided shade in summer while allowing winter sun to warm the interior. The tiles themselves are a warm terracotta color, made from local clay that was shaped, dried, and fired in kilns. Chinese potters had been perfecting their craft for thousands of years, developing techniques for creating ceramics of extraordinary beauty and durability. The ceramic tradition in China stretches back at least 20,000 years, making it one of the oldest in the world, with each dynasty developing its own distinctive styles and glazes. You pass through an ornamental gate at the village entrance, its wooden posts carved with protective symbols and painted in deep red lacquer. Red has been considered an auspicious color in China since ancient times, symbolizing good fortune, joy, and protection against negative influences. The lacquer itself is made from the sap of the lacquer tree, which has been harvested and processed in China for over 3,000 years, creating a finish so durable that lacquered objects from ancient dynasties can still be found perfectly preserved today. The village streets are narrow but clean, swept carefully each morning by residents who take pride in maintaining their shared spaces. The organization of villages like this reflected Confucian principles of social harmony and mutual responsibility. Confucius, who lived from 551 to 479 BCE, taught that society functioned best when everyone understood and fulfilled their roles with virtue and respect for others. His philosophy would influence Chinese culture for over 2,000 years, shaping everything from government administration to family relationships. You notice an elderly man sitting outside his home, practicing calligraphy on large sheets of paper spread across a low table. His brush moves with fluid grace, creating characters that seem to dance across the page. Chinese writing is one of the world's oldest continuously used writing systems, with its origins dating back over 3,000 years to oracle bone inscriptions. The characters evolved from pictographs, simplified pictures of the things they represented, into the complex, beautiful forms used today. The art of calligraphy was considered one of the highest forms of personal expression in ancient China, practiced by scholars, officials, and emperors. The way one wrote revealed one's character, education, and inner state of mind. A calligrapher might spend years perfecting a single style of script, understanding that true mastery came not from rushing but from patient, mindful practice. The elderly man looks up and smiles at you, nodding a greeting. His face is weathered but peaceful, marked by years of living close to the land and the seasons. He gestures for you to come closer, and you see that he's writing poetry, classical verses that capture the essence of the morning in just a few perfectly chosen characters. Chinese poetry reached extraordinary heights during the Tang Dynasty, from 618 to 907 CE, when poets like Li Bai and Du Fu created works of such beauty and depth that they're still read and memorized today, over 1,000 years later. The old man's brush pauses over the paper, and in that moment of stillness, everything seems to hold its breath. Then he continues, completing the poem with a final elegant stroke. He reads it aloud, his voice soft and musical, and though the words are in classical Chinese, their meaning seems to transcend language, something about morning mist, mountain peaks, and the eternal flow of water toward the sea. Your journey continues beyond the village, following a path that leads toward the sound of flowing water. You emerge from between the houses to find yourself on the bank of a great river, perhaps the Yellow River, known as the Huanghe, which the Chinese have called the Mother River for thousands of years because it nurtured the earliest Chinese civilizations along its banks. The Yellow River gets its name from the massive amounts of yellow loess soil it carries from the highlands, giving the water a distinctive golden-brown color. This sediment, while making the river challenging to navigate, also enriched the farmland along its course, making it possible to support large populations. The river stretches over 3,400 miles from its source in the mountains of Qinghai Province to the Bohai Sea, making it the second longest river in China and the sixth longest in the world. You sit down on a flat rock near the water's edge, watching the river flow past with its ancient, unhurried power. The river has been flowing like this for millions of years, long before humans walked these banks, and it will continue flowing long after. There's something deeply peaceful about witnessing this continuity, this constancy of nature that connects past, present, and future in a single flowing moment. Ancient Chinese philosophers often used the river as a metaphor for the Tao, the way, the path, the fundamental nature of the universe. The Tao Te Ching, written by the sage Laozi around the 6th century BCE, teaches that water is the most powerful force in nature precisely because it doesn't resist but flows around obstacles, always seeking the lowest place, yet eventually wearing away even the hardest stone. This philosophy of Wu Wei, effortless action, or acting in harmony with nature rather than forcing things, became central to Taoist thought. A fisherman passes by in a small boat, using a long pole to navigate the current. He stands at the stern, his movements economical and practiced, reading the river's flow with an expertise developed over decades. Fishing techniques in ancient China were sophisticated, including not just nets and lines but also the famous tradition of using trained cormorants, large diving birds with rings around their necks that prevented them from swallowing large fish, allowing fishermen to retrieve the catch. The morning sun climbs higher, and its light transforms the river into a ribbon of molten gold. Dragonflies skim over the water's surface, their iridescent wings catching the light. In Chinese culture, the dragonfly symbolizes change, adaptability, and self-realization, the ability to move between the elements of water and air with grace and ease. You notice a bridge in the distance, its elegant arch spanning the river in a perfect curve. Chinese engineers were master bridge builders, creating structures of remarkable beauty and durability. The Anji Bridge in Hebei Province, built in 605 CE during the Sui dynasty, is the world's oldest standing bridge with a segmental arch, meaning its arch is less than a semicircle, making it both stronger and more graceful than earlier designs. This bridge has survived over 1,400 years of floods, wars, and earthquakes, testament to the brilliance of its design. The sound of the river is constant but not monotonous, It changes subtly as the water moves over rocks, around bends, through shallows and deeps. Listening to it, you feel your breathing naturally slow and deepen, synchronizing with this ancient rhythm. The Chinese practice of Qigong, which developed over thousands of years, teaches that breath is the bridge between body and mind, and that conscious breathing can harmonize our internal rhythms with the rhythms of nature. Everything feels perfectly still, despite the river's motion. This is the paradox of water. It's always moving yet always present, always changing yet always itself. Watching the river, you understand something of the Taoist concept of stillness within motion, rest within activity, peace that exists not as the absence of movement but as harmony with the fundamental flow of existence. From the riverbank, your journey takes you to a small tea house nestled among bamboo groves. The path leading there is paved with flat stones, worn smooth by countless footsteps over the years. Bamboo grows thick on either side, creating a green tunnel that filters the sunlight into soft, dappled patterns. The bamboo stalks sway gently in the breeze, creating a sound like soft percussion, a natural music that has inspired Chinese artists and poets for millennia. Bamboo has always held special significance in Chinese culture. It grows quickly, bending in wind but rarely breaking, and remains green throughout the year, qualities that made it a symbol of resilience, flexibility, and integrity. Bamboo was also enormously useful, providing material for construction, baskets, writing strips, musical instruments, and countless other items. Before paper was invented, books in ancient China were made of bamboo strips bound together with silk or leather cords. The tea house itself is a simple wooden structure with a thatched roof, open on one side to the garden beyond. Inside, a few low tables are arranged on woven mat flooring, and the air is filled with the subtle, complex fragrance of tea. The practice of drinking tea in China dates back at least 3,000 years, beginning as a medicinal drink before becoming a central part of daily life and culture. You enter and sit at one of the tables, settling onto a cushion in the quiet space. The tea house keeper, a woman of middle years with a serene expression, nods in greeting and begins to prepare tea using the traditional Gongfu method. This elaborate tea ceremony, which developed during the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644 CE, transforms the simple act of making tea into a meditation, a moving meditation where every gesture is performed with complete attention and care. She begins by warming the teapot and cups with hot water, creating a gentle sound as water meets ceramic. The teapot itself is made of Yixing clay, a special purple clay from Jiangsu province that has been used for teaware since the Song dynasty. Yixing teapots are never washed with soap because the porous clay absorbs the essence of the tea over time, gradually developing a patina that enhances the flavor of future brews. Some Yixing teapots have been used for generations, passed down in families like precious heirlooms. She measures out the tea leaves with practiced precision. These are oolong leaves, partially oxidized to a point between green and black tea, their flavor complex and nuanced. Tea cultivation in China is ancient art, with different regions producing teas with distinctive characteristics based on soil, climate, and processing methods. The most famous teas, Longjing, Tiguanyin, Pu'er, have been perfected over centuries, with tea masters passing their knowledge from generation to generation. Hot water is poured over the leaves, and immediately the fragrance intensifies, floral notes mingling with something deeper, almost mineral. The first infusion is poured out without drinking, a ritual washing that both cleans the leaves and allows them to begin opening. The second infusion is poured into small cups, perhaps only an ounce or two of tea in each. The tea house keeper presents a cup to you with both hands, a gesture of respect that has been part of Chinese etiquette for thousands of years. You lift the cup and inhale first, taking in the tea's aroma. Then you sip slowly, letting the liquid rest on your tongue before swallowing. The flavor is subtle but profound, floral and sweet with a hint of mineral depth, warming as it travels down your throat. This is tea as meditation, tea as art, tea as a path to mindfulness and presence. The tea house keeper pours multiple infusions, each one revealing different aspects of the tea's character. Between infusions, there are stretches of comfortable silence, broken only by the gentle sounds of water being poured, cups being set down, breath being drawn and released. The silence wraps around you gently, like a comfortable robe, creating a space where nothing needs to be said or done, where simply being is enough. From the tea house, your path leads to a classical Chinese garden, one of those remarkable spaces that transform a small area into an entire world of beauty and meaning. The entrance is through a moon gate, a perfectly circular opening in a white wall that frames the view beyond like a living painting. The Chinese garden tradition dates back over 3,000 years, with gardens designed not just as places to grow plants but as spaces for contemplation, artistic inspiration, and spiritual cultivation. You step through the moon gate and find yourself in a different realm. The garden is not large, but it seems to contain infinite space through clever design. Winding paths lead around rockeries and between plantings, never revealing the whole garden at once but unfolding it gradually, scene by scene. This principle of borrowed scenery and hidden vistas creates a sense of discovery and mystery, inviting you to explore slowly and mindfully. A pond lies at the garden's heart, its surface like dark jade, perfectly still except for the occasional ripple from a golden koi moving beneath the surface. Koi have been bred in China for over 2,000 years, originally as food fish but later purely for their beauty and the peaceful presence they bring to garden ponds. The fish move slowly, their scales catching light, their mouths occasionally breaking the surface with gentle sucking sounds. Around the pond, carefully selected rocks have been placed, not randomly but with profound attention to their shapes, colors, and the way they relate to each other and to the space. Chinese scholars spent lifetimes studying rocks, appreciating them as natural sculptures shaped by wind and water over eons. The most prized rocks came from Lake Tai in Jiangsu province, their surfaces full of holes and caves created by erosion, making them look like frozen waves or clouds made solid. A pavilion with a gracefully curved roof stands at one edge of the pond, its wooden pillars painted deep red, its eaves decorated with carved designs. You climb a few steps and sit on the wooden bench inside, looking out at the garden and the pond. From here, the entire space can be contemplated as a composed view, like a three-dimensional painting. This is the purpose of the pavilion, to provide a place to sit, to observe, to allow the garden to work its peaceful magic on the soul. The garden includes many plants selected for their symbolism and beauty. Lotus flowers bloom in the pond, their petals a pure pink-white, emerging clean and beautiful from muddy water, a Buddhist symbol of enlightenment arising from the muck of worldly existence. Bamboo grows in one corner, its straight stalks representing integrity. A plum tree near the pavilion will bloom in late winter, its delicate flowers appearing even while snow is on the ground, symbolizing resilience and renewal. Chinese garden design was considered one of the refined arts, practiced by scholars and poets who understood that creating space was as important as creating objects. These gardens represented the Taoist principle of finding the infinite within the finite, the wild within the cultivated, the natural within the artificial. A perfect garden captured the essence of mountains, forests, and rivers within a space perhaps no larger than a tennis court. The air in the garden is perfumed with osmanthus, tiny white flowers with a fragrance like ripe apricots and honey. Osmanthus trees have been cultivated in China for over 2,500 years. Their flowers used to scent tea, flavor wine, and perfume sachets. The scent drifts on the breeze, subtle and intoxicating, enhancing the sense that you've entered a space slightly apart from ordinary life, a threshold between the mundane and the transcendent. Your journey continues, and now you find yourself in a marketplace in an ancient city, perhaps Chang'an, the capital during the Tang Dynasty, which was the largest city in the world at its peak, home to over 1 million people. The marketplace is a sensory feast, the air filled with fragrances of spices, incense, and cooking food, the sounds of merchants calling out their wares, customers bargaining, musicians performing, the sight of goods from across Asia and beyond spread out on tables and hanging from stalls. This marketplace exists because of the Silk Road, the network of trade routes that connected China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. The Silk Road wasn't a single road but a web of routes, both overland and maritime, along which goods, ideas, technologies, and cultures flowed in both directions. Trade along these routes dates back at least 2,000 years, to the Han Dynasty, which officially opened the routes around 130 BCE. The most famous product traded along the Silk Road was, of course, silk, that lustrous fabric that was one of ancient China's most closely guarded secrets. The Chinese discovered how to produce silk from silkworm cocoons over 5,000 years ago, and for thousands of years they maintained a monopoly on silk production. The process is laborious and delicate. Silkworms must be raised on mulberry leaves, their cocoons carefully harvested, the threads unwound and twisted together, then woven into fabric. A single cocoon might yield a thread up to 3,000 feet long, but it takes many threads twisted together to create a thread strong enough to weave. You pass a stall where bolts of silk are displayed in colors that seem to glow with inner light, deep crimson dyed with safflower, brilliant blue from indigo, yellow from gardenia flowers. The merchant invites you to feel the fabric, and you run your fingers over its surface, marveling at how something so delicate can also be so strong. Silk was literally worth its weight in gold in Rome and other distant markets, and the Chinese phrase for the Silk Road, Si Chou Xi Lu, reflects how central this fabric was to the entire trade network. But silk wasn't the only thing traded. Chinese merchants exported porcelain, lacquerware, tea, and paper, all technologies that originated in China. In return, they imported goods like spices from India and Southeast Asia, precious stones from Central Asia, and eventually new crops like grapes and sesame seeds. Ideas and religions also traveled along the Silk Road. Buddhism reached China from India via these routes, profoundly influencing Chinese culture and philosophy. You notice a stall selling paper, and the merchant explains that paper was invented in China around 105 CE by Kailuan, an official in the Han Dynasty court. Before paper, the Chinese wrote on bamboo strips, silk, or sometimes on materials like wood or pottery. Kailuan developed a process for making paper from tree bark, hemp, rags, and fishing nets, creating a writing material that was cheaper and more convenient than anything that had come before. This invention would revolutionize communication and learning not just in China but eventually throughout the world. The paper on display comes in various qualities, some rough and thick for everyday use, others smooth and white for calligraphy and painting. The merchant demonstrates how ink settles on the paper, neither bleeding through nor beating up on the surface, but sinking in just enough to create clear, permanent marks. Chinese papermaking remained the world's most advanced for over 1,000 years, until the technology gradually spread westward along the Silk Road. Near the paper seller, you see a display of woodblock prints, images carved into wooden blocks, inked, and pressed onto paper to create multiple copies. Woodblock printing was invented in China during the Tang Dynasty, making it possible to produce books, religious texts, and artworks in quantities that would have been impossible with hand copying alone. The earliest surviving printed book is the Diamond Sutra, a Buddhist text printed in 868 CE, though printing technology certainly existed before then. The marketplace is busy but not frantic. People move through the aisles with purpose but without rushing, examining goods, chatting with merchants, stopping to rest at tea stalls. The atmosphere is one of commerce's social activity, a gathering place where people come not just to buy and sell but to meet friends, hear news, and participate in the life of the city. Time flows forward, and your journey brings you to the Imperial Palace complex known today as the Forbidden City, though we're visiting it in its prime, when it truly was forbidden to common people, accessible only to the emperor, his family, his officials, and his servants. The complex was constructed between 1406 and 1420 during the Ming Dynasty, requiring over 1 million workers and covering 180 acres with nearly 1,000 buildings. You approach from the south, crossing the vast courtyard that leads to the Meridian Gate, the main entrance to the palace complex. The gate towers above you, its architecture powerful yet graceful, painted in imperial red with a roof of golden yellow tiles. Yellow was the emperor's color, reserved exclusively for imperial use, symbolizing the earth and the center of the world. The emperor was known as the Son of Heaven, the mediator between heaven and earth, and the palace was designed to reflect cosmic principles and reinforce this divine connection. As you pass through the gate, you enter the outer court, used for ceremonial purposes and government administration. The buildings are arranged along a north-south axis, a fundamental principle of Chinese architecture and city planning based on geomantic beliefs. The most important buildings face south, toward the yang direction of warmth and light, while the north was associated with yin, coolness and darkness. The Gate of Supreme Harmony stands before you, leading to the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the largest and most important building in the palace complex. This hall was used for the most significant ceremonies, imperial coronations, royal weddings, the emperor's birthday, and announcements of major decisions. The hall sits on a 3-tiered marble terrace with elaborately carved railings depicting dragons and phoenixes, the symbols of emperor and empress. You climb the marble steps slowly, taking in the details, the dragons carved into the stone so skillfully they seem ready to swim through the clouds, the lions standing guard, their expressions both fierce and serene. The precision of the carving is extraordinary, each scale of each dragon distinct, each curl of each lion's mane carefully rendered. Chinese stone carvers developed techniques over thousands of years that allowed them to treat the hardest materials, jade, marble, granite, as though they were clay. Inside the hall, The space is vast and dim, illuminated by natural light filtering through windows and by large lanterns. The emperor's throne sits at the center, elevated on a platform, surrounded by gilded columns decorated with dragons ascending toward the ceiling. The ceiling itself is covered with intricate designs and carvings, painted in gold, red, and blue, colors that symbolized good fortune, joy, and heaven. The throne room is peaceful now, empty of the court officials and petitioners who would once have filled it during ceremonies. The silence wraps around you gently, allowing you to feel the weight of history, the countless ceremonies performed in this space over centuries, the continuity of tradition and ritual that gave structure and meaning to imperial life. Beyond the ceremonial halls lies the inner court, the residential area where the emperor, his family, and his concubines lived. The architecture here is more intimate, with smaller buildings arranged around courtyards, gardens with ancient trees and carefully placed rocks, pavilions where one could sit and write poetry or practice calligraphy. The imperial gardens were maintained by skilled gardeners who understood the principles of Chinese landscape design, the creation of miniature landscapes that contain the essence of mountains, rivers, and forests. Trees were carefully pruned to achieve specific shapes, rocks were positioned to create compositions, water features were designed to create pleasant sounds. These gardens were places of retreat and contemplation, where even an emperor might find respite from the burdens of rule. Your journey now takes you north, to the Great Wall of China, but not as a military fortification, which is how it's often remembered, but as a feat of human determination and engineering, a structure that speaks to China's long history of organization, planning, and monumental building projects. You're standing on a section of the wall as it winds along a mountain ridge, following the contours of the terrain. The wall stretches as far as you can see in both directions, disappearing into misty distance. The stones beneath your feet are worn smooth by centuries of weathering and by the footsteps of countless guards who once walked this section. The Great Wall wasn't built all at once or by a single dynasty. Various walls and fortifications were constructed by different states during the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE, but these were connected and greatly extended by Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of unified China, after 221 BCE. Subsequent dynasties, particularly the Ming Dynasty, continued to rebuild and extend the wall. In its many forms and iterations, the wall eventually stretched over 13,000 miles, though not as a continuous structure but as a network of walls, watchtowers, and fortifications. The construction of the wall required enormous resources and labor. Workers included soldiers, peasants, and prisoners, and the conditions were often harsh. However, the wall also served purposes beyond military defense. It facilitated trade and transportation, helped collect customs duties on goods traveling along the Silk Road, and symbolized the boundary between Chinese civilization and the nomadic peoples to the north. From where you stand, the view is breathtaking. Mountains roll away in every direction, covered with forests that shift from deep green to purple in the distance. The morning mist fills the valleys, creating a scene that looks like a classical Chinese landscape painting, nature at its most ethereal and beautiful. You understand why Chinese artists spent lifetimes trying to capture such scenes, trying to express in ink and paper the profound peace and majesty of mountains and mist. The silence up here is profound. Everything feels perfectly still, as though you're standing in a place outside of time, a liminal space between earth and sky, past and present. A bird of prey circles in the distance, riding thermal currents, completely at ease in its element. Watching it, you feel your breathing slow, your shoulders relax, your mind settle into stillness. The wall itself, despite being a military structure, has a certain grace in how it follows the land's contours, rising and falling with the ridgelines, never fighting against the mountains but working with them. This reflects the Chinese principle of finding harmony between human works and natural forms, of understanding that the most enduring structures are those that respect and incorporate the existing landscape. Watchtowers are spaced at regular intervals along the wall, roughly every few hundred yards. These towers served as lookout posts, storage facilities, and places where guards could shelter during storms. You enter one of these towers and climb to its upper level, where windows look out in all directions. From here, guards could use smoke signals by day or fires by night to send messages to other towers, creating a communication system that could transmit warnings across hundreds of miles within hours. The interior of the tower is simple: stone walls, a few small rooms, openings for windows and for a chimney. You can imagine guards stationed here, day after day, watching the horizon, sharing meals, telling stories to pass the time. Their individual names are lost to history, but their collective effort created one of humanity's most enduring monuments. From the Great Wall, your journey takes you inward, away from physical structures to the realm of ideas and philosophy. You find yourself in a quiet study in an ancient library, perhaps in the Imperial Academy where scholars came to study for the civil service examinations. The civil service examination system was one of ancient China's most remarkable innovations. It was established during the Han Dynasty and refined over centuries, reaching its most developed form during the Tang and Song dynasties. This system allowed men from any social class to enter government service based on merit rather than birth. Candidates studied for years, sometimes decades, mastering the Confucian classics, history, poetry, and administrative theory. The examination system had profound effects on Chinese society. It created a class of scholar officials who share a common education and worldview. It encouraged literacy and learning, and it provided social mobility in a way that was rare in the ancient world. The system lasted for over 1,300 years, only ending in the early 20th century, and it influenced similar systems in Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. You're surrounded by books, scrolls, and bound volumes containing the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years. The smell of paper and ink fills the air, that distinctive aroma that libraries have, speaking of preserved knowledge and intellectual effort. One scroll lies open on a reading table, and you see it contains text from the Analects, a collection of sayings attributed to Confucius and his disciples. Confucius taught that the foundation of a good society was moral education and ethical behavior. He emphasized 5 key relationships between ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, elder and younger siblings, and between friends, and argued that when everyone fulfilled their proper role with virtue and benevolence, society would function harmoniously. His philosophy shaped Chinese government, education, and family life for over 2 millennia. On another table, you notice a copy of the Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism attributed to Laozi. While Confucianism emphasized social harmony and proper behavior, Taoism focused on aligning oneself with the Tao, the fundamental nature of reality, through simplicity, spontaneity, and non-action, Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching teaches that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest, that water is the greatest power precisely because it doesn't resist, and that the wise person knows when not to act. A third text catches your eye, writings from the legalist school, which influenced the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. While Confucianism relied on moral education and Taoism emphasized natural harmony, legalism argued for strict laws and harsh punishments to maintain order. Though legalism as a philosophy fell out of favor after the Qin dynasty, its influence on Chinese administrative practice remained significant, often blending with Confucian ethics to create a practical system of governance. The room also contains texts on other subjects, treatises on agriculture describing crop rotation and irrigation techniques developed over millennia, medical texts detailing acupuncture, herbal remedies, and the circulation of qi through the body, mathematical works explaining the use of the decimal system and the solving of complex equations, astronomical charts tracking the movements of planets and predicting eclipses. Chinese scholars understood that knowledge was interconnected. Mathematics informed music theory, astronomy related to agricultural calendars, medicine incorporated philosophical understanding of balance and harmony. This holistic approach to learning created polymath scholars who could discuss poetry, practice calligraphy, understand governance, and appreciate garden design with equal facility. As day transitions toward evening, your journey brings you to a festival celebration. Lanterns hang everywhere, creating a warm, magical glow as twilight deepens. This is perhaps the Mid-Autumn Festival, celebrated on the 15th day of the 8th lunar month, when the moon is at its fullest and brightest. The Mid-Autumn Festival has been celebrated in China for over 3,000 years, originally as a harvest celebration giving thanks for the year's crops. It's a time for families to gather, to appreciate the beauty of the full moon, and to share mooncakes, round pastries stuffed with sweet lotus seed paste, red bean paste, or salted egg yolk, their round shape symbolizing completeness and reunion. You're at a garden prepared for moon viewing, with tables set up in open areas where the moonlight can illuminate the gathering. As the full moon rises, its light transforms the garden into a place of silver and shadow. The Chinese have always had a special relationship with the moon. It appears in countless poems, paintings, and stories, often associated with longing, beauty, and the passage of time. Families are gathered around tables, sharing food and tea. Children run between the tables carrying lanterns shaped like rabbits, a reference to the folk tale of the jade rabbit who lives on the moon, forever mixing herbs for the elixir of immortality. The lanterns cast dancing shadows, and the children's laughter floats on the evening air, a sound of pure joy that transcends language and time. An elderly woman begins to tell a story, the legend of Chang'e, the moon goddess. Her voice rises and falls in the traditional story, in cadence, and everyone falls quiet to listen. The tale speaks of Chang'e who drank the elixir of immortality and floated up to the moon, where she lives in a palace with only the jade rabbit for company, eternally separated from her husband Hui on earth. It's a story about sacrifice, love, and longing, and it has been told at Mid-Autumn Festival celebrations for over 2,000 years. Musicians begin to play traditional instruments, the guzheng, a long zither with 21 strings that creates sounds like falling rain or flowing water, the pipa, a pear-shaped lute with a history stretching back over 2,000 years, the dizi, a bamboo flute whose clear notes seem to carry directly to the heavens. Chinese musical tradition developed sophisticated systems of scales and modes, understanding that different tones and melodies could evoke specific emotions and even influence health and well-being. The music flows naturally, without obvious beginning or end, creating a soundscape that enhances rather than dominates the evening. Traditional Chinese music often emphasized space and silence as much as sound, understanding that what is left unplayed is as important as what is played. This aesthetic principle applied equally to poetry, painting, and garden design, the art of suggestion rather than statement, of allowing space for the listener's or viewer's own imagination and interpretation. People begin performing traditional dances, their movements flowing and graceful, sleeves extending, their arms gestures like wings or waves. Chinese dance has ancient roots, with court dances documented as far back as the Zhou dynasty, 1046 to 256 BCE. Different regions developed distinctive styles, but all shared an emphasis on fluidity, control, and the expression of inner feeling through external form. The festival continues as darkness deepens and the moon climbs higher in the sky, growing impossibly bright, seeming close enough to touch. Fireworks suddenly burst overhead, not the loud, explosive kind meant to startle, but gentler varieties that create cascading patterns of colored light, like willow branches or chrysanthemum blooms opening in the sky. The invention of gunpowder in China during the Tang Dynasty, around the 9th century CE, led not just to weapons but to fireworks, which became an essential part of celebrations and festivals. The Chinese understood that gunpowder could create beauty and joy as well as destruction. As the fireworks fade, leaving trails of smoke that drift slowly in the moonlight, the celebration grows quieter. Families sit together, some pointing out features on the moon's surface, others simply enjoying the companionship in the perfect autumn evening. The sense of peace is profound, this moment of connection between family members, between earth and sky, between the present celebration and the countless generations who have celebrated this same festival under this same moon. As the festival winds down and people begin to drift home, your journey takes you to a scholar's workshop where some of ancient China's most important inventions were developed and refined. The room is lit by oil lamps, their flames steady and bright, creating a warm glow that makes the space feel cozy and safe. On one table, you see a compass, not the modern kind with a needle pointing north, but an ancient Chinese compass using a naturally magnetized lodestone carved into the shape of a spoon, balanced on a smooth bronze plate marked with directions. The Chinese discovered magnetic properties and created the first compasses during the Han Dynasty, initially using them for geomancy and fortune-telling before realizing their navigational value. By the Song Dynasty, 960-1279 CE, Chinese sailors were using compasses for maritime navigation, a technology that would eventually spread to the rest of the world and make long-distance sea voyages possible. Another table displays samples of porcelain in various stages of production. Porcelain, sometimes called china in English, was invented in China during the Tang Dynasty, though the techniques were perfected during the Song and Ming dynasties. True porcelain required two specific ingredients, kaolin clay and patunsa, china stone, fired at extremely high temperatures, around 1,300 degrees Celsius. The resulting ceramic was white, translucent, strong, and extraordinarily beautiful. Chinese porcelain was treasured throughout Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe, where alchemists and craftsmen spent centuries trying to discover the secret of its production. You notice printing equipment in one corner, wooden blocks carved with text and images, ink made from pine soot and animal glue, and sheets of paper ready to be printed. Movable type, using individual characters that could be rearranged and reused, was invented in China by Bixing around 1040 CE, during the Song dynasty. He created characters from ceramic material, though later inventors experimented with wood and metal. While movable type didn't revolutionize Chinese printing as dramatically as it would later do in Europe, partly because Chinese writing has thousands of characters compared to alphabetic systems with only a few dozen letters, it represented a crucial conceptual breakthrough. On a shelf, you see what appears to be a small device with a pendulum. This is a seismoscope, invented by the polymath Zhang Heng in 132 CE during the Han Dynasty. The device contained a pendulum that would swing during an earthquake, triggering a mechanism that caused a bronze ball to drop from one of 8 dragon-shaped spouts into the mouth of a bronze toad below, indicating the direction from which the earthquake came. This was the world's first instrument for detecting earthquakes, predating Western seismoscopes by over 1,700 years. The scholar working in this room looks up and gestures for you to approach. He's working on refining a formula, perhaps for ink or porcelain glaze, or medicine. The methodical, patient work of experimentation and refinement characterized Chinese approaches to technology and craftsmanship. Innovations weren't usually sudden breakthroughs but the result of generations of incremental improvements, each craftsman or scholar building on the knowledge of those who came before. On a desk, you notice papers covered with calculations using a decimal place value system, the same basic system we use today. The Chinese developed this system over 2,000 years ago, making complex mathematics possible. They also used negative numbers, fractions, and developed methods for solving algebraic equations that anticipated later mathematical developments in other cultures. The workshop also contains astronomical instruments, an armillary sphere for modeling the movements of celestial bodies, star charts showing constellations and planets, and tables predicting eclipses with remarkable accuracy. Chinese astronomers kept continuous records of celestial observations for over 2,000 years, creating one of the most complete astronomical databases in the ancient world. They identified and cataloged supernovae, comets, and other phenomena, providing modern astronomers with valuable historical data. Everything feels perfectly still in this workshop, despite the evidence of intense intellectual activity all around. This is a space dedicated to patient inquiry, to the slow accumulation of knowledge, to the understanding that wisdom comes not from rushing but from careful, sustained attention to the nature of things. As night deepens, your journey brings you to a Buddhist temple complex nestled in mountains, far from cities and crowds. The temple has been here for centuries, a place of peace and contemplation where monks practice meditation, study sutras, and maintain the buildings and gardens. Buddhism reached China from India along the Silk Road, probably arriving during the Han Dynasty and becoming widely established during the period of disunion, 220 to 589 CE. It mixed with native Taoist and Confucian traditions, creating distinctively Chinese forms of Buddhism. Chan Buddhism, which emphasized direct experience and meditation over scripture study, developed in China before spreading to Japan, where it became known as Zen. You enter the meditation hall, a large room with wooden floors worn smooth by centuries of use. Cushions are arranged in rows, and monks in simple gray robes sit in meditation, their postures erect but relaxed, their faces peaceful. The atmosphere in the hall is thick with accumulated stillness, not the stillness of absence but the living stillness of concentrated presence. You find an empty cushion and settle onto it, crossing your legs and straightening your spine. The silence in the hall wraps around you gently, supporting rather than demanding. You let your breathing settle into its natural rhythm, not forcing anything, simply observing the gentle flow of air in and out of your body. Meditation practice in China developed sophisticated understandings of consciousness and mental training. Practitioners learn to observe thoughts without being carried away by them, to notice sensations without clinging to pleasant ones or pushing away unpleasant ones, to rest in awareness itself rather than being constantly distracted by the contents of awareness. The Chinese also developed moving meditation practices like Tai Chi and Qigong, understanding that stillness of mind doesn't require physical immobility. These practices combine slow, flowing movements with breath control and mental focus, promoting both physical health and mental clarity. Tai Chi in particular became enormously popular, practiced by people of all ages and social classes as a way to maintain health and cultivate inner peace. The monks in the hall around you sit like mountains, solid, unmoved by passing thoughts or sensations, present and aware. There's no sense of strain or effort, just natural, effortless presence. This is the fruit of practice, not achieving some special state but simply learning to rest in things as they are, without constantly trying to change or improve the present moment. Time passes, though you're not sure how much. In meditation, clock time becomes irrelevant. There's only the present moment, which somehow contains everything. The silence deepens. Outside, you can hear the wind moving through pine trees, a sound like the ocean, eternal and soothing. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings 3 times, marking the end of the meditation session. The monks begin to move, slowly and mindfully, standing and bowing before filing out of the hall. You follow them into the courtyard, where the night is clear and cool, stars scattered across the sky like grains of rice on black cloth. The temple buildings are dark shapes against the star-filled sky, peaceful and solid, having sheltered generations of seekers after wisdom and peace. Your journey through ancient China is drawing to a close now, though in another sense it continues forever, because the peace and wisdom you've encountered exist outside of time, always available, always present, waiting only for you to become still enough to notice them. You find yourself back by the river where your journey began, though it's night now, and the river is a ribbon of silver under the moon. The water flows as it has flowed for millions of years, patient and unstoppable, carrying everything toward the sea. You sit on the bank, feeling the cool earth beneath you, hearing the water's constant song, watching the moon's reflection ripple and reform on the surface. The images from your journey float through your mind, becoming softer and more dreamlike. The village at dawn with smoke rising from cooking fires, the calligrapher's brush moving across paper, the tea ceremony's measured grace, the scholar's garden with its careful composition of rocks and water, the Silk Road marketplace full of goods from distant lands, the Forbidden City's golden roofs, the Great Wall following mountain ridges into mist, the philosopher's words preserved in ancient texts, the festival lanterns creating magic in the darkness, the workshop where inventions took shape through patient experimentation, the meditation hall's profound stillness. Your breathing has slowed, deep and regular, like the rhythm of waves on a distant shore. Each exhale releases more tension, more thought, more awareness of anything except this perfect peace, this gentle descent into rest. Ancient China understood that rest is sacred, that sleep is not absence but a return to source, a dissolution of the separate self into the greater wholeness of being. The Taoist philosophers taught that in deep sleep, the spirit returns to its home, refreshed and renewed, ready for another day of engagement with the world. Let yourself drift now, like a leaf on the river's surface, carried gently downstream. There's no need to hold on to anything, no need to direct or control. Simply allow the current to carry you, trusting in the ancient flow that has carried countless beings before you and will carry countless more after you're gone. The silence wraps around you gently, like silk, soft and strong. The darkness is not empty but full of rest, full of peace, full of the presence that exists before and after and beneath all experience. You're held safely in this darkness, supported by the earth beneath you, covered by the sky above, cradled in the eternal present moment where nothing needs to be different from how it is. Sleep now, deeply and completely. Let ancient China's wisdom carry you into dreams. The river flows on, the mountains stand patient and eternal, the stars will slowly overhead, and you rest in perfect peace, held safely in the embrace of time and timelessness, sleeping the sleep that renews and restores. Drift deeper now, the moon's light on water, bamboo swaying in wind, the distant sound of a flute, incense smoke rising, silk rustling softly, tea being poured, brush on paper, water over stones, everything flowing, everything peaceful, everything perfect as it is. Sleep, let go completely. Ancient China watches over your rest with the patience of mountains and the gentleness of morning mist. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, simply rest, simply peace, simply sleep. The journey is complete, the stories are told, and now there is only this soft darkness, this gentle breathing, this perfect rest. Sleep deeply, peacefully, completely. You are safe, you are home, you are sleeping,